listeners out in podcast land. Thank you for tuning in for another eBay chat. Today's guest is Nikki in Alabama. The date today is February 1st, 2023, and this is episode number 98. Look at us getting close to 100 episodes. Okay, a few things that happened since last week. I want to share with you a conversation I had with another seller when I was purchasing an item on eBay last week. The listing did not have measurements on the clothing item I was interested in, so I messaged the seller asking for the measurements. I want the item to fit and don't want to have to return it. I mean, think about it. Returns are just as frustrating for the buyer as they are for the seller. So I asked the question and got this reply. I have all of my inventory put away until sold, so unless it sells, I'd rather not try to get to it. Okay, really? I was just floored by that response. I want to give this person my money, and they refuse to provide the basic information I need to buy the item. Wow. I mean, I understand people are busy, but to have a buyer in hand and let them get away? The irony here is, how many items has this person not sold because they are not answering questions with the correct information? Pretty much the answer I got was a non-answer. And I looked at some other items in their store, and none of their clothing listings have measurements. So you have to wonder two things. First, how many people are passing over their listings because there are no measurements and they're not going to bother to ask for them? And two, how many sales are they losing by answering inquiries with this kind of attitude? It's just like slamming the door in a buyer's face. So after thinking about this for a while, I responded with, "Okay, thanks. I'll buy it from someone else." So if you're listening out there and you want to sell more items, for heaven's sake, answer questions. Even if you are away from your inventory on a trip or just out for the day, at least reply to their message quickly with some kind of response stating that you received their question and you will answer them as soon as possible. Just acknowledge them, communicate, let them know that you are interested in making this sale and you will work with them. I ended up buying what I needed from another seller who responded with the measurements, and they were correct for me, so I bought the item. So that is your teachable moment of the week. And now a word about sound effects. I quit using the fire engine and siren sounds because that was freaking out people driving while listening. But here is a funny comment about another sound effect. "Hi, Suzanne. I was driving to the Goodwill bins in Dayton, Ohio, and was listening to one of your podcasts about 2 months ago. All of a sudden, I hear a cat meowing. I was looking all over my car because I thought one of my cats got into my car. I finally realized it was your sound effects because you were talking about pets. Kind of funny. Thanks for the podcast, Amy." So, yeah, I do have to keep myself entertained while editing these podcasts, and sometimes the idea just drops into my head as I'm working on it, and I just go with it. But I never thought a cat meowing would cause someone to think it was their own cat. Okay, and now for the conversation with Nikki.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of eBay the Right Way. And we have Nikki with us today. How are you doing this morning, Nikki?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Suzanne?
I'm great. And we decided to record this on a Sunday because you work full time.
I do. I work Monday through Friday at my normal, regular, everyday 9 to 5 job.
Do you want to share what that is?
I can. My official title is Environmental Scientist Supervisor. I work for my state Department of Environmental Management, and I supervise a group of aquatic biologists. So, yeah, it's a little complicated, and we do a lot of work. What we do is we assess the quality of the surface water in the state of Alabama in wadable rivers and streams. So anything that you can walk across safely. We also have another group that does the deeper rivers and reservoirs and lakes and things like that. We take water quality samples so that they can be chemically analyzed. We take surveys of the habitat and like bank stability and in-stream habitats. We collect fish in some places. So we'll use a backpack shocker and collect whatever fish and ID them. And we'll also do macroinvertebrate sampling, where we go and collect insects that live in the water or part of their life cycle in the water. And we ID them, and the types of species that are located there will tell us the quality of the in-stream habitat and the water as well.
Wow, that's a lot. What kind of degree do you have to do that kind of work?
I have a bachelor's in science in biology and chemistry.
Oh, wow. And you're in Alabama. Did you go to school in Alabama?
I did. I graduated from the University of South Alabama.
Okay.
It's in Mobile.
Okay. Yep. I know where that is. So you were on the coast there.
I was. I love it. I love it down there.
Probably wasn't terrible.
It was great. I was able to work right there in Gulf Shores. Most of the time I lived in Gulf Shores and commuted to Mobile. And I would have my beach chair in the trunk and my bag, and I'd go out there with my books and study on the beach sometimes.
And then when you got hungry, you'd go eat some seafood.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that is a very interesting job. So what brought you to eBay? What was the event, or like what made you decide to start selling on eBay?
Well, I'm kind of a new seller, and I say I'm a new seller because I'm just taking it seriously now. I sold when I was in college. I'd go to places like Plato's Closet or my friends' closets, and I was trying to like stay in style. And I'd buy purses, handbags, backpacks, different clothing items, and then I would get tired of it, and then I'd sell it on eBay and get something new. So I was kind of staying current all the time. And back then I collected Sorelli jewelry. And so people started buying me those as gifts, but some of those pieces were way too big and gaudy for me. So I would sell the ones that I really didn't like or weren't my style on eBay. And so I didn't think of eBay as more than a platform to sell the things you were tired of at the time. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even think of it as a full-time job or a full-time side hustle back then. Mm-hmm. Here this past year, my fiance he watched some videos on YouTube and wanted to start selling video games on eBay and have his own store. And I was like, oh, people do this full time? Like
on purpose?
On purpose?
Intentionally? Not just when you're sick of your clothes in your closet?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that light bulb moment from sellers or regular people who aren't sellers like that. When they put it together, it's like, wait a minute, I could intentionally on purpose get things to sell. Ooh, that could be good.
Yeah, it's like your Goodwill epiphany when you saw the like
Yes.
really high-end clothes and you're like, light bulb, let me
Yeah,
see.
yeah. And it's like you get it now. It's everywhere.
Yes,
And then once
yes.
you realize you can do that, it's everywhere. It's, oh, wait, we got to stop at that garage sale. Oh, I could go to that Goodwill that's right by my house. It's you start expanding your opportunities to get things to resell, and
Mhm.
once you understand that, it's like it never goes away. It's just part of
Never.
your DNA.
Never. And I was packing up my stuff to have a yard sale. And I was like, wait, no, let me take this out of my yard sale box and put it in my eBay pile. Like, this is too good for a yard sale.
Yeah, I mean, yard sales are great for thinning out your possessions, but then if you understand reselling, it's like, well, maybe 100 people come to my yard sale, but who knows how many will see it online and where they're located. Like,
Yes.
somebody in Canada is not going to come to your yard sale in
No.
Alabama.
And we live in a super, super rural town. So our yard sales are sparse. So not many people come to them. We don't have a whole lot of competition here. So I wouldn't really have luck on a lot of things at a yard sale anyways. But I was trucking along, helping my fiance with his little video game business and finding things. But as I was out looking, I was finding so many other things. And I'm like, wow, I should probably get this because this is a really good deal. I know this is worth more because I've always been a collector of like vintage items, and you can see my Pokemon collection behind me and know a lot about video games and the merchandise associated with that and other toys and things. So I'm like, well, I'll just sell these things on my personal eBay account. I've sold things on eBay before. And I was kind of looking for a side hustle to replace what I did before COVID, because I was doing a business where I made home decor items out of recycled wood flowers. And I sold an in-person store, shows like art shows, crafts fairs. I did a big, huge Christmas show that was a week long every year. But when 2020 happened, all of those shows were gone. And I sold a little bit of that stuff on Etsy too. So I had some Etsy experience. But it started going kind of haywire when that whole top star seller thing started happening on Etsy and promoting and their ads and stuff. So I decided to step back from Etsy and just do in-person shows. And I did pretty well, but they were all canceled in 2020 and 2021. And they just started coming back this last year. But in February is when I got promoted to do the job that I do now. And I didn't have as much time off from work. So we travel a lot for work, and I just couldn't take off the days to go to the shows and do them and prepare for them like I used to could. So I was out my little extra side hustle and my little extra money for my pocketbook. So I needed something else to do. And I'm like, oh, I can do this and not have to really go anywhere. I can source on my lunch break, and I can go on Saturdays and Sundays with my fiance, and we can spend time together sourcing. And it's a lot of fun because I was going to those places anyway, even before either of us sold, because I love to find cool stuff at the Goodwill or a thrift store or antique mall or the flea market. So I'm really not doing anything I didn't do before.
When you travel for your job, are you by yourself?
Sometimes, not as much anymore, because we work in pairs usually, or groups of 4, depending on what we're doing. But when we're done for the day, if it's still light out and it's a reasonable time, I may go to a video game shop or to a Goodwill if they're still open, and see what I can find. But I work in the Capitol, so there's 3 Goodwills, a bunch of antique stores, a few different flea malls where people have booths. So there's plenty right around me, and our prices are really low here in South Alabama. So I always can find a good deal.
Well, so that kind of takes the place of having to do those in-person shows and craft fairs. You just tag it on to your day if you're traveling and near something where you can pick up some things to sell. So traveling with your job's not a bad thing.
It's not. And my fiance and I travel a lot because we do Pokemon tournaments, and we like to go to different cities because we play Pokemon Go competitively. And so we like to go to new cities that have a big scene. So we'll make a day of like going. Sometimes we go to Columbus, Georgia. We'll go to Tennessee, or we'll go to North Carolina, and we'll make a day of going around exploring the city and playing, and also stopping at different stores.
So we're going to talk more about Pokemon in a few minutes, but let's get back to what got you started doing your own thing. So you were already thrifting, buying pre-owned clothing for yourself, cleaning out your closet. You knew about thrift stores. So you were helping your fiance. And then what made you decide, hey, I'm going to do this myself?
Well, I knew I needed another little side gig because this past year, I've been helping my mom, taking her to cancer treatments. She's been sick this past year. And so there was so much extra cost associated with her healthcare, and I needed to try to pad my income a little more. So as I'm finding these great things as we're outsourcing video games, I just start listing them and thinking, okay, am I going to do this part-time for right now? But I really want, as a long-term goal, to try to make this my main second job. So with my job, I can retire in 12 years and draw my pension. So if by
12 years?
Yes.
And you get a pension?
Yes.
That's unheard of. Oh my gosh.
Well, I've been there 12 years. I've been there over 12 years.
Oh, you have? Okay.
So we have 25 years before we can retire and draw our pension.
Okay, so you just have 12 more.
I just have 12 more years.
Okay.
So I want to, by that time, know everything, know what sells in my store, know what I can pick up in my area, and have all my shipping down and my listing down so that I can transition into that being my retirement job.
Okay. Can I ask you what year you were born?
1983.
Okay. And I always ask it that way because if I say, how old are you?
Yes.
That's not going to be true anymore. So, oh, wow. So you were born the year before I graduated from high school.
Oh, no.
Okay. So you were a teenager in the late 90s.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of that stuff's hot now.
Oh, yes. And I know exactly what it looks like. And because I'm
like, oh, I had that. Oh, yes. I had that girl. I had that sleeping bag. I had that stuffed animal. All that stuff is, vintage because you're vintage.
Yes. And like, that's what's making it kind of easy for me to pick up things that I recognize and that I have, because 90s things are so hot right now and they're in style and in trend.
That is wonderful. Yeah. And every generation has their stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they know it because, oh, I had that. My parents had that. So if you're paying attention, it's not really that hard to find these vintage and valuable items because what is it that my kids had, those JanSport backpacks with the bottom and the polka dot, like my daughter had that one. And I think that's worth $100 now. Or, just all the Lisa Frank stuff and I can't even remember all of it, but I'll see these things on the Money Making Mondays and it's like, oh, we had that. My kids had that.
Oh, yeah. I cry now to think of all the Lisa Frank stuff that I had in school because I was a super nerdy. I'm a scientist, so I was a super nerdy kid. So I had a little folder and binder coordinated for every different subject. And Like, what did I do with all that stuff? I could have sold it if I had just kept it, because I didn't write on anything, or like I took care of things. So it would have been like pristine, but it's gone.
If we only had known. I mean,
know.
even the Disney party supplies, the paper plates and napkins that they only made for a short time, and just everything you can imagine. But don't beat yourself up for being a nerd, because who was it? I think Bill Gates said, be nice to nerds because you might end up working for one. Well, good for you. So you started just selling your own stuff to create another income stream. And look at you planning for retirement 12 years away. There's so many out there, like in my age group, that, okay, I'm going to retire in 2 years or 5 years or whatever. And they're hanging in there for that pension. And, they may not really love their job anymore, but
Yes.
it's kind of foolish to walk away from all that you've accumulated. But, they're getting situated to have eBay ready to jump into full-time or however they want to do it, so they can combine travel and relaxing and, having your chapter of life, because you're done raising kids and you're done with your job and now you get to have fun. And I love that you are already considering that at this point.
I had been considering it. That's why I was trying to, like, my craft business. I'm artistic as well. So I like to work with my hands and make things and do things, like just to have that outlet. And I thought that would be what I would do, something like that. But I'm finding that I really enjoy this and it's really fulfilling. And it doesn't take as much of my time. So I have more free time to do other things that I enjoy.
Well, and it's always working in the background.
Yes.
So if you have a day where you just don't want to work on it, or you want to go hiking with your friends or whatever you want to do, it's like, okay, I've done the work, now it's payoff time. And I love it when I take a day off and then I get a whole bunch of sales.
Oh, yeah.
That's the universe saying, you worked for this. Everything's going to keep going in the background and you're making money 24 hours a day. Okay, maybe you don't sell something every day, but people are looking at your items. They're considering buying. You're sending offers. They're sending offers. So it's just like this wheel that never stops.
Yeah. So see, before I would have to physically be there. I would physically have to make the item. I would have to package it up. I'd have to go and set up and physically be there to ever get a sale. But with this, it's a lot more passive. Once you list it and you get a lot of things listed and done, it's extremely passive.
Yeah. I mean, you're always working on it. You always feel like I need to be listing things, but you forget how much is going on in the background that you never see.
Yes.
If you ever look up your traffic reports, you can see how many views you had on your items in a 24-hour period. And so when I get a little discouraged, like, oh, why have I not sold anything? That's what I look at. I was like, okay, well, these 300 people looked at my items. So that's, that may lead to a sale later. That's fine. And, but you do forget when you're not actively working on it that, yeah, I've done all the work. And now it's just, it's just snowballing in the background. And a lot of people don't think about that. So,
exactly. And I'm trying to learn that now. What's my best optimization? How do I do my photos? How do I do my listings, my keywords? And so that's what I'm trying to learn, to try to optimize and get those views. Because even if that person that viewed your item doesn't buy it, that's showing eBay that your item is valuable. Your item has a want, and as people have a desire for it. So someone else is gonna, from that traction, step in and buy it from you.
And you're an analytical person as a scientist.
Yes.
So you're gonna dig in there and see what can I do to improve this? What should I not do anymore that is, taking up my time and is not time efficient or productive? So You don't have to have an analytical brain to do eBay, but
Mhm.
I'm like that too. Like, I wonder if I do this. I wonder what happened there, and you're
Yes.
never going to know all the variables because there are too many and they're not available to us. But I love that you are looking at those analytics and trying to figure things out.
And I figure if I can learn those things now early, then it'll just help me in the future. So I'm doing my little eBay experiments and trying to find all the different things that's going to help me in the future. And once I have all that down pat, I should be pretty good to go.
Well, have you come up with anything yet that you could share? Any kind of experiment or analytical?
A lot of them I've taken from your podcasts.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah, I think I've binged all your previous podcasts.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I'm promoting things and changing to the international standard delivery has helped a lot. Because I had everything on GSP, nobody was buying internationally. It was, I guess, too expensive. But so far in the past 2 weeks, I've sold 2 things internationally. And
they're phasing out GSP anyway.
Yeah,
so
they're phasing it out.
It's not even going to be a factor. And I've always been a firm believer that GSP is too expensive. That is cost prohibitive for some people. Yes, sure. Things sell all the time with, shipping costs is 3 times the cost of the item. But you think, of what, 7 billion people in the world, obviously a lot in third world countries that aren't buying on eBay. But, how many of them say, oh, I really want that item, but I just can't pay that much. I just can't afford that shipping cost.
Yeah, especially if it's a lower dollar item. And I'm paying attention to how much the label actually costs. And it's one of the things I just packaged yesterday going to Canada. And maybe it was $2 more than to California from where I am. So it's not a lot different. The one thing went to Spain, but that one was a little bit heftier. But yeah, I think you can pick up a lot of Canada buyers that way. And I think that some people were talking about on your podcast. And then having the 2 different domestic shipping services selected, I started doing that and noticing the views going up.
Okay.
And that was key. And so I would list things and then start getting the views immediately. And also, I've been trying to play around with my pictures and how they look on desktop versus mobile. And I was doing, we've got a photo box and a ring light, so we can get the pictures look great in the photo box, and I'd upload them from my phone, but then I would look at my listings on the desktop and there would be these weird white borders on the edge and the colors wouldn't come out of the background as pure white, and it just looked clunky. And so I've started, even with my photo box, using Photo Room to remove the background and then using it to size for the eBay thumbnails. And the pictures are looking so much more professional and so much better. And I think that matters a lot. So some users are mobile. When I look for eBay items to buy myself, I'm mostly on mobile because I'm on the go constantly. But some people are shopping on their desktop, on their computer, and they want something that looks good, that looks professional. And that has made my pictures look a lot better.
And that is a great tip, to look at your listing on mobile after you list it on the computer, just to see if there is a difference. I love that, because I think they said like 60% of all sales are through mobile now.
Yes.
And yes, things sell all the time that are just thrown on somebody's kitchen counter. There's all this stuff in the background and you're like, how did that even sell?
I think the same thing.
But I feel like the only thing between you and your buyer is a screen, whether it's a computer screen, an iPad, a phone, and that picture carries a lot of weight, because even psychologically, you might just click away if the picture's not good, or if it's blurry. And I see that all the time doing my research for things. It's like, this is so blurry. How can the buyer even see this? And I just want to tell them, hey, make your pictures better and that item will sell. But it's just, I think psychologically, like magazines, we look at the pictures before we read anything.
Yes.
So that's what the marketing industry does, is they make images the first thing you're going to look at. They know that because it's just where your eye goes as a human. It goes to the pictures. So, it is important. I think it's more important to do your listings well than do so many a day. If you're doing 20 listings a day, but they're all sloppy, that really good for your business? Is it better to slow and steady wins the race, be the turtle? I'm the turtle. I'll admit it. I don't like to run things fast because I make mistakes. So, 10 listings a day from start to finish is a lot.
It is. And also with doing your photos that way and making sure they look good in the thumbnail, it'll help you show up on the Google searches. So, I have tried to list something and then try to see if I go to Google and Google that item, if it's like a rare kind of, not a lot on eBay, not like a new age shirt that there's 3,000 of them listed. So maybe there's 20 of this item on eBay. Then I'll go and Google that item and see if my listing shows up in a Google search. And it has. So.
Oh, good. Okay, well, let's talk about some things you've sold.
Okay. So you had me on your $100 November video with the Garmin. Since I'm a field biologist,
yes,
exactly what that was.
I've seen your name a lot.
So. I just joined the group not too long ago, a couple months.
Good for you. So it was a Garmin. Was it for the car or just like
it was a GPS for using like a handheld?
Handheld, that's what I mean. Like when you're out in the woods looking for that stream you're supposed to be testing, right?
I wanted to keep it. So I saw it and I was like, oh, I need another one of these. And it's so hard to buy things when you're work for the government. It's so hard for us to purchase things we need. So a lot of us end up buying stuff we want with our own money and using it. So I got it for $15 at a yard sale. It was in Fort Benning, I think. And military guy had a lot of cool stuff in his yard sale. You would drive past it and some people probably wouldn't have stopped because there was like military gear and baby clothes. And so
gee, what station of life is he in, right?
Yeah.
A new parent.
And so I'm like, oh, let me go see. And I saw that and I knew exactly what it was because I've used them. And I was going to keep it and I looked it up and I'm like, ooh, these ones are selling for really high because it's a smaller one. It's not big and clunky. And geocachers like smaller ones.
Yes.
So they don't take up a lot of space. Like if you're, for me, for my work, I like one with a bigger screen so I can see like the topo map and the satellite map. But a geocacher would prefer one that is smaller and more compact.
Okay. Do you want to tell the listeners what geocaching is in case they know? I know what it is. But the listeners are like, what are they talking about?
I don't geocache, but my sister does. So, but she uses a phone app, but a lot of them are out in remote areas and you don't have phone service. So that's where GPS comes in mind. So people will hide these little things in random places around cities and parks and just everywhere. And it's just a little trinket or a little note or something like that.
Something that can be found.
Something that can be found, but sometimes it's really hard to find. You'll go on a bridge and you're like, where is this? I'm at the location.
Yeah, it's like in a hole under a log and on a trail somewhere or just like downtown in a restaurant bathroom, or like
Yeah.
it's for the fun of like treasure hunting.
Yeah, it's like treasure hunting, but you don't keep the treasure.
It's just the act of finding it that's fun.
Finding it. Yeah.
So they use different technologies to find these things. Don't you get some clues?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on like if it's an older one or some of the newer ones, like some of the apps now, you like log if you found it, and if you use the least amount of clues, you get more of like a score, I think. Is what she was trying to explain it to me, because I knew people who did it a long time ago and they didn't have those type of apps. So they used GPS to get around and do it. But she was showing me how they have the new apps now for it. And it seemed pretty fun, but I've got other things I'd like to do besides.
Yeah, you'd rather treasure hunt in a thrift store, right?
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, I believe there are clubs and online groups. Like if you want to get involved in doing that, you join a group and or somehow get the information, the clues, so that you can go out and try to find the item. And it's just like it's like a video game concept almost, where you're wanting those points.
It's like like a LARPing.
LARPing?
Live action role play. You know, the people.
Oh, that's a new word, LARPing. I didn't know that was a word. You're so informative. Okay, so you got the Garmin GPS for 15, and what'd you sell it for?
120. I took an offer for 120.
Nice. Okay, good for you.
That was a good $100 profit.
Yeah,
after
good return on that item.
And I was trying to think back on the things I sold before and what was probably the rarest thing that I've sold. So you would have something interesting for your listeners.
Well, thank you for being so prepared.
And it's hard to go back and see what you sold in years and years ago, because unless they left you feedback, you're like, oh, I forgot.
But some things you'll just remember. And let me tell you this real quick, because I'm already working on my 2023 BOLO book.
Ooh, I can't wait.
I'm thinking of, I'm trying to balance it with clothing, household, collectibles, plush, like things in every category. And so things are just dropping into my head like, oh yeah, I sold that thing when I first started on eBay. I wonder how much it's worth. And some of them are worth the same or more, because now it's 20 years later. I started in 2003, but it's like all coming back. So you haven't really been doing it long enough to experience that yet. But 10 years from now or 12 years from now, when you retire, you'll be like, oh, I sold one of those when I first started and it's still worth money. And that's what I like to focus on, is those items that are going to be worth a lot forever, evergreen. Forever. Not just it's hot right now because, this actor is in this movie that just came out and then it's going to fizzle out. I don't like those kind of items, because if you want to learn something, learn about something that's going to be worth money forever, not just for 6 months.
Okay.
Right.
So, yes, exactly. And I forgot a whole chunk of Harley Davidson things I sold years ago.
So wait, I totally interrupted you. What you were going to say, you thought of an item that would be interesting for the listeners.
Okay. I'm in Alabama, and this is an Alabama made item, and it's very rare. I sold this in 2012, and it is called an Ella Smith Alabama Indestructible doll. And it was made around the turn of the century. So she made her dolls in Roanoke, Alabama, from about 1895 to 1922, I think. And this doll was in my family since I was, as long as I can remember. It was at my great grandma's house. It was scary, kind of ugly looking.
Creepy doll.
Yeah, it was a creepy doll. And you can tell it was definitely handmade and hand painted. And I am not a doll person. I was a play outside kid, dig things up, find animals.
Build forts in the woods.
Yes.
Yeah, I did that too.
And I was not a doll kid, but this was the one doll that I ever cared about. And so it was the condition of it was awful. I think it didn't have its own clothes. So I found these little Lee doll overalls I put on it. I took one of my great grandpa's white t-shirts and cut it up and made a little t-shirt for it. His hands and feet were torn. I sewed them back together. And everybody kept trying to throw it away. My grandma tried to throw it away. My great grandma tried to throw it away. And I kept saving him. I named him, his name was Boy George. So the last time my grandma tried to throw away, I'm like, don't do it. I think he's probably collectible. Somebody out there will probably want him to put him on a display shelf or something. So I posted it I looked up what he was, and I was like, oh, wow, these things, people want these dolls. And I learned where he was from and who made him, and I posted them on eBay in an auction. And I don't know if it was buy it now in 2012, was it?
Probably. Yeah.
Probably.
Price. Yeah. I think that came along in the late 2000s.
Okay. So, but I listed them on an auction, and I started getting all these messages. Oh, where is this from? Who had this? Like, what's the provenance? And I was like, provenance? What is provenance on this? I don't know what that word means. And they're like the story of where did he come from? Who owned
the backstory.
him? Right. Like, oh, so I had to type an essay to this person that was bidding on this doll. And we found him in our next door neighbor's attic when she passed away. I fixed his hands in this year. I made him these clothes. He didn't have his original clothes. Luckily, I didn't try to paint his head where the paint was peeling off, because that would have ruined it a little bit. But he sold for $185 on auction. And they were going about that time then, but I looked them up a few days ago, and they're going in the thousands.
Yeah.
So if you're in the South, and a lot of them were sold in a store in Pennsylvania, I believe. So Google Alabama Indestructible Doll, familiarize yourself with what it looks like. And if you ever come across one, even if it's in bad shape, pick it up.
Great tip. Now, what did you sell yours for?
$185.
$185. Okay.
In 2012.
Yeah. Everybody's kicking themselves about stuff that has just become so valuable. It's like, how do you know, unless you're, psychic and you know everything, but even that can be wrong. I mean, you don't know. You made the best decision you could at the time with the information you had. And, that could change in a year.
Yeah, I would have had to carry him around for 10 years to get more money for him.
10 years of creepiness and fear.
Yeah, 10 years of creepiness and fear. But the guy was very happy who got him. He said that he lives in Roanoke, Alabama, and always wanted one, but couldn't afford one. That's why he ended up buying one that was in such poor condition.
Okay.
So that's the rarest item I've ever sold on eBay. Okay.
Do you have any more sales on your list?
Yeah, some recent plushies that I got at the flea market. I like to dig through the plushies because I've joined some of those lost and found plushie groups on Facebook, and they're always looking for things that they had. And for the last 15 years, I've been looking for this lion plush that my sister had when she was a kid, and I still haven't found it. I found one similar, and I bought it for her and gave it to her for Christmas. But I think if I find all these plushies and put them on eBay, it's going to be somebody's long lost plush, and I'll get some good karma. So maybe one day I'll find my sister's lion that she's been looking for.
You might. I found one last year that was a little bunny, a little Easter bunny, and he's got bunny slippers on. And I put that in my son's Easter basket when he was 3. He's 26 now. And it's like, I just recognized it. And I was like, some other kid is going to have had this. And it wasn't even a brand. It just was made in China. It wasn't Fisher Price or Play School or anything like that. It was just, I recognized it from that it was old. And, it was in great condition, didn't look old and beat up, but that's the thing. And you've probably heard either on my videos or just through the Money Making Mondays, like the stories you get with oh, my son had this and he lost it at Six Flags and blah, blah, blah. And, I want to get him one for his 30th birthday and just all these things. And it doesn't have to be one of the name brands. It could just be anything that's old.
So I'm digging through the plushies all the time, like you, Suzanne, and and I found these 2 South Park plushes. I found Cartman. He's in a wizard costume, and he was damaged. His belt was peeling. He was yellowed a little bit. His cape had a hole in it and a stain on it. He looked pretty rough, and I was like, oh, this one's going to be a stretch. But it is South Park, and a lot of people like to collect South Park. And it was 2014. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of old. And I know like a lot of those had exclusives for Hot Topic and different stores like that. So there were fewer of them produced. And he didn't have a tag. And so I also found with him a goth Stan. And it's Stan with a little ear pierced earring. And he's dressed in like a goth. And he was perfect shape. He wasn't peeling anywhere. He was clean. He had the tag. And so I went home to look them up. I got them for $1 each at the flea market, just randomly thrown in a pile of plush with it.
Really?
And they're really small, about 6-7 inches tall. And I looked them up and like had to like hold my chest because my heart was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I got to list these immediately. And the Stan sold for $150.
Wow. That's
Yes.
great.
Mm-hmm.
And
South Park, yeah.
okay, because it says here there's 25 seasons. So it started in 1997. So let me just say this for the listeners. South Park is in its 25th season. It started in 1997. So even though it's still on, those plush are still highly sought after. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there's limited editions that were collaborations with specific stores.
Mm-hmm. These weren't terribly old. They were 2014. And then the Cartman sold for $69.
And they cost you what?
$1 each.
Yeah, I love those. They're so easy to ship. And I've never had a plush return ever.
Oh, I haven't had any returns yet so far, so I'm crossing my fingers it stays that way. But that's good to know that that's not I want to get into niches and categories that don't have as much returns as some of the others.
Yeah, sell things that people want to keep.
Mm-hmm.
And that, clothing I do because there's just so much of it, and I don't get many returns at all. But people say, oh, I'm never going to do clothing, too many returns. Well, it depends on what you're selling. And just for the listeners, if you're getting a lot of returns on a specific type of product, it's probably the nature of the product. Are you selling iPhone cases that people use for a couple months and then they want to return it, or whatever, 30 days? And handbags are terrible. That's a whole racket of just get one, use it for 29 days and then return it.
Mm-hmm.
They figured out the system. So a lot of those high fashion items, that's why I don't do them, because it's not something somebody wants to keep.
No, they're meant to be disposable. A lot of clothing now is meant to be disposable, which breaks my heart because I'm an environmental scientist and I want things to be reused to the point over and over again until it can't be reused anymore and ends up in the landfill. So I feel like I'm doing my part when I'm at the bins picking stuff out.
Yeah, I just talked about that somewhere. I think it was in my sales update video about fast fashion, all those crappy brands, like Cato and Fashion Bug, and it's just crappy stuff. And there's so much information online about what it's doing to the environment. And it's just, piles and these huge mounds of clothing that get shipped to third world countries, like Goodwill. When they pull stuff, it goes to third world countries and people just dig through the piles, and it's just terrible.
And that's bad. That's a bad practice for businesses to do because they don't have the infrastructure in third world countries to deal with waste like we do in the United States.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it ends up polluting waterways, because everything that's litter ends up getting rained on, getting washed into a ditch that washes into a stream that washes into the river and washes into the ocean. So a lot of stuff that gets shipped to third world countries, because it's cheaper than disposing of it in the United States, we're just dumping our trash on them.
Yeah, they don't really need it over there. And if you look up photos of like India and their drinking water, it's all just plastic garbage and clothing, and just everything is in there. It's terrible. So as a clothing reseller, I love that aspect of it, that it may only be a few things, but it's going to get more life before it ends up in the landfill.
Somewhere.
Yes.
Vintage clothes were just made better.
It's what?
Vintage clothes were just made better. They're durable. You can wear them over and over again. They don't wash them one time and they get a hole in it, or move your arm weird and then it rips at the seam. Like you can it's just
and it's funny, my parents were born in the late 1930s.
Yes.
And throughout our lives we have the photo albums, and it's like they're wearing the same shorts in every picture at the beach. It's like, because they never wore out.
Yeah. You didn't sit on the concrete and it rubbed the bottom side of your bathing suit, and then you're like, oh, now it's so peeled and I can't even.
So like we're looking through the family albums, and it's like, really, you wore those plaid shorts in every picture. Our dad was very thrifty, but it's like a 10-year difference, because the clothes didn't wear out and people were more frugal, and we didn't have all these options for clothing, back in the 60s. You didn't have these giant malls and all these, giant Walmarts and Targets with so much merchandise. So, I'm with you. I am concerned about the environment, what we're leaving behind for the next generations. And we just have to stop it. We have to stop my big pet peeve is the one-use plastic. Stores just can go back to paper bags.
Yeah. And a lot of them are moving that way. One's little step at a time. And that's why I try to remind people. They're like, oh, I want to do this thing, but it's not much. I'm just doing this tiny little thing. Tiny little things add up. So you think, oh, I'm not doing my part because I'm just cutting back on single-use plastics, for instance, or I'm going to recycle one new type of item. You don't understand how much of an impact that has when everybody's doing one little thing.
Right. And it's like all this prepared food, like in the grocery store, the bakery and the deli, and all of their prepared foods are in plastic. And that just really bothers me. But anyway, that's another discussion. So
I can talk about sustainability and recycling and waste minimization for like hours.
Well, maybe we'll have you back on to do that. But I wanted to get into your Pokemon knowledge, because behind Nikki is a shelf full of Pokemon plush and trinkets and all kinds of stuff. And before we started recording, she said that they are really into that, and they don't even sell the Pokemon stuff, even though it's valuable. So can you talk a little bit about what you do in that world?
Okay. So my fiance and I, we actually met because of Pokemon.
Are you going to have a Pokemon wedding?
Well, that's kind of. We're getting married next month in Las Vegas, and there's a Pokemon event that we were going to attend. And Ben said, oh, why don't we just get married while we're there? It's Vegas. And I said, sure, let's do that. So a lot of our friends were going to go to the event anyways. And so we decided the Pokemon event is not transitioning over to the wedding event. So it's going to be a normal wedding without the Pokemon theme, but we're going to be there in Vegas because of a Pokemon event. We travel to different places. He's even traveled to Canada to play in tournaments. And we met at a tournament in Richmond, Virginia.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. That is an unusual story. So you have a lot of knowledge about these things and what's valuable, but you're just not selling them right now.
No, we're collectors. what's behind me is just a small portion. I have more shelves in the corner, and then our gaming systems and our game collection, and even more stuff in the closet. So we were collecting, and I love finding Pokemon stuff at the thrift or at the Goodwill. I pick it up all the time. It doesn't really matter what it is. Got to catch them all, right?
Right. Do you have any insight on what is valuable that sellers could be looking for?
Oh, especially the games. Whenever we do sell dupes when we get the games, because we're going for a complete collection across all the systems of the video games, which is going to be hard because one of them is very rare and very expensive. But anytime we list a duplicate, it sells really, really quickly. But you've got to familiarize yourself with how to tell if they're real or not.
There's fake Pokemon games?
Yes. Pokemon franchise is the most fake video game I think that there is.
What about the plush? Is that fake?
Yes.
Oh, you're kidding me. So you have to.
Well, not necessarily fake. It's just like not officially licensed.
Right.
By certain companies have official license to produce a Pokemon plush, and some companies do not, but they produce them anyways. So you'll get one, you'll notice it looks a little off. It doesn't look really quality, or the eyes are kind of misplaced, or the color is off, and you're like, oh, this one looks a little sketchy, a little suspicious, and look at the tag and it just says made in China, and
doesn't have a brand on it. So is there a brand like Gund, or that is authorized? Tomy?
Is the biggest. Tomy is probably the biggest producer of
okay
Pokemon.
Well,
and they did a lot
really,
of the 90s ones.
Okay. And really anything that has value is going to be faked. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I don't think about plush being faked. But yeah, anybody out there can recreate it, and as long as it's a little bit different.
And the official ones from the Pokemon company, they're very collectible, very good quality. Once you pick it up and touch it, and there are a lot of times those are sought after because they're only in the Pokemon Center Japan, so you can only order them from Japan. We order stuff from Japan all the time for our collection. There's a line of them called Pokemon Fit. It's just the original 51 Kanto Pokemon. They're really small. Those are good ones to pick up and collect, because some of them are harder to find because they were either Japanese only or just sold in Pokemon centers.
Okay. Now, what was that thing that came out? I think it was maybe 2016, where people were out looking for the virtual Pokemon.
Oh, Pokemon Go.
Okay. So I used to go walking on this walking trail that was like 12 miles long. And just one day, all of a sudden there was so many people out there, and they all had their phones, and they were off the trail in the woods. I'm like, what are they doing? What is this? And that's what it was. And so is that still a thing?
Oh yeah, that's what we travel and play. That's what we're going to Vegas for next month. And this year, actually, the Pokemon company has added Pokemon Go to their tournament circuit. So that was 2022. And they just had the first Worlds. And so we've been doing regionals here in the United States, and they've been going on in Canada and all over the world. So if you win a regionals, then they pay for you to go to Worlds in Japan this next year. So one of our friends actually won the Baltimore regionals.
Really?
And, yes. And so we're really excited to see him get to go to Japan. And Ben's going to Orlando the first weekend in February, and I hope he does well. And so we can go to Japan.
That would be amazing. A free trip to Japan. Oh, that's very interesting. You have such an interesting life. And, we talked before the recording, but you have all these items. So if there was ever a financial need, you could sell them. I mean,
yes.
it's better than money in the bank right now, I think, the collectibles world, because all those things that were made in the 90s, that's it. They're not going to be made again. So they're only going to get more valuable. And while you would hate to part with it,
Yes.
I have a friend that collects Christopher Radko ornaments. And I think I've told this story, but in 2008, she and her husband both lost their jobs during the economic downturn. And they actually sold some of those Radko ornaments, and they were selling for like $700 a piece.
Wow.
That's what they lived on for a while till they got new jobs and all that. But so it's like a ruby in your pocket. It's there if you need it, but you don't have to sell it.
Have a whole room of that's dedicated to this collection. And I would hate to think about how much is actually in here, because we have a lot of the vintage things from the 90s. We have a lot of the cards from the first base set, and because we collect cards as well. So if we ever got in a pinch and we had to, like with your friend, in that kind of situation, we could. And we do sell, if we get something that's better than the one we have, then we'll sell the one that's in worse condition.
Okay, so if you had a duplicate plush, and you would just sell the one that was in the lower condition.
And that's how we do with our games, since we're going for that complete collection. Those older Game Boy games, a lot of times you'll find them, the label's got a kid wrote his name on it, or scribbled on it, or tore part of it off, or it's faded, or it just doesn't look good. So we're always looking to upgrade condition wise with our personal collection.
Well, that's smart that you have a strategy, and being a scientist, you probably always have a strategy. But there's collectors that have duplicates of everything, and it just overtakes their house. And I've seen these at estate sales. Like, good grief, they just have it all, and multiples. And so it expands quickly.
It does.
Yeah.
I think because some of the Game Boy games, we've sold at least 5 of them, the same game. So we're constantly rolling through, upgrading on our condition.
Good for you. Okay, well, we've been going about an hour now. I told you that would go by fast.
It did.
I've changed my last question. So I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite part of reselling?
See, my favorite part. Oh, I would have to say when I am out and I see something, and then I just light up when I see it, and then I bring it home and I'm so excited for this thing. And then I show Ben, oh, look at this nice, cool thing that I found today. And then I list it and someone buys it really quickly. So somebody else had that same feeling that I did. Somebody else saw it and was just overjoyed and excited and just had to have it.
Right. So it's almost like the whole process and the emotional side of it. Yeah.
The emotional side of it. Yeah.
It's wonderful that your fiance is in this world too, because he gets it when you come home. Even if he doesn't know what that thing is or how much it sells for, he understands your excitement.
Yeah. And he's happy for me when I find something nice and I sell it for high. He's really excited for me, even though he may not know what it is, because he doesn't know antiques and vintage and collectible things as I do. He knows video games and he knows consoles, and he's played them throughout his life, and he's doing super well with that store. So we're running the 2 stores, and he does most of the work in the video game store. So we'll have two successful stores pretty soon, I'm hoping.
Oh, I know you will, because you seem to have the right work ethic. You're patient. You're not expecting results in a week. And you're also very discerning about what you choose to sell. And then your Pokemon collection, that's just separate, but it's an option if you ever needed it. So
we'd have to open a 3rd Pokemon store.
Yeah, you would. Well, it's just been lovely chatting with you. You're so informative, and I really appreciate you coming on because there was a little resistance at first, but
I was a little nervous because I'd never done a podcast before, and I'm such a podcast fan. I was like, and I love your podcast. It's so educational. I listen to others and they're just chit-chatting or talking about something that doesn't even involve reselling for most of the episode, but I have learned so much from yours. And I
thank
joined the
you.
premium library. And so I've got tons of those videos to watch and catch up on. So,
Oh, good, good. So, in reference to the podcast, everybody has a different story, but
yeah.
yet similar undertones of, like, getting ready for retirement or being a caregiver for a sick relative, or whatever. There's kind of some standard reasons that people come to eBay, but everybody's story is different. And I think the more we know about each other, the better off we're all going to be, because you know what? Now I'm going to start looking for Pokemon stuff.
And
Well,
and indestructible dolls.
well, and like in the plush bins, there's so many things I don't know. My kids weren't really into that. And so we didn't have a lot of that around. But I mean, I'm looking at them behind you now. And what's the yellow one with the red cheeks?
Pikachu.
That's what I thought. Okay, I got that one right. So pay more attention to those in the plush bin when they pop up.
Even if they're not official license, they'll still sell.
But you just have to say, just take a picture of the tag. So
just take a picture of the tag. You don't have to say reproduction or anything.
Yeah, the buyer will know what they're getting if you show the tush tag.
Yes, just don't try to sell the games unless you do know for certain that they are. And if anybody needs help, they can reach out to me.
Okay.
I'll be glad to help authenticate games and stuff.
Well, and are there authentication services for
the video games?
Yeah.
I don't think eBay does that, but
there might be private services.
But that's expensive. There's things that you can do yourself right at your home quickly to tell if it is real or not.
Okay, well, maybe that's when we need to get you back on, is to get some questions ready, since you have so much knowledge about these products. I think people will be interested in that. So look, now we have a second one in the future. Okay, well, I will let you go. Thanks again for coming on, and we will watch for more sales on the Facebook group.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Nikki. That was a fun conversation, and I learned a lot. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and share your wisdom. On to today's trivia question. What is the mystery of the Loreto Chapel? Here are a few seconds to think about it. Okay, this is from the History Channel. 3 mysteries surround the spiral staircase in the Loreto Chapel: the identity of its builder, the type of wood used, and the physics of its construction. When the Loreto Chapel was completed in 1878, there was no way to access the choir loft 22 feet above. Carpenters were called in to address the problem, but they all concluded access to the loft would have to be via ladder, as a staircase would interfere with the interior space of the small chapel. Legend says that to find a solution to the seating problem, the sisters of the chapel made a novena to Saint Joseph, the patron saint of carpenters. On the 9th and final day of prayer, a man appeared at the chapel with a donkey and a toolbox, looking for work. Months later, the elegant circular staircase was completed, and the carpenter disappeared without pay or thanks. After searching for the man, an ad even ran in the local newspaper, and finding no trace of him, some concluded that he was Saint Joseph himself, having come in answer to the sisters' prayers. The stairway's carpenter, whoever he was, built a magnificent structure. The design was innovative for the time, and some of the design considerations still perplex experts today. The staircase has two 360-degree turns and no visible means of support. It is said that the staircase was built without nails, only wooden pegs. Questions also surround the number of stair risers relative to the height of the choir loft and about the types of wood and other materials used in the stairway's construction. Over the years, many have flocked to the Loreto Chapel to see the miraculous staircase. The staircase has been the subject of many articles, TV specials, movies including Unsolved Mysteries, and the full-length movie titled The Staircase, starring William Peterson and Barbara Hershey. So you can Google Loreto Chapel and see what it looks like, and this is just a mystery of architecture. Very interesting. Next week, my guest is a secret. Someone in her household also listens to this podcast and doesn't know this guest is coming on the podcast, so we're going to surprise them by doing a shout out at the beginning. I just love surprises, so this will be fun. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you again for making this podcast part of your week. Stay positive and keep moving forward. Talk to you next week. Bye.